Hi, good morning. My name is Ashley Irwin, and this is the Injury Law Pod. I am filling in as a guest speaker for Eric Bartlett this week, and we are going to highlight National Safety Month, Trailer Safety Week, and National Ride to Work Day, all of which are observed in June. So, we're going to explore how each of these connects to personal injury law from everything from tractor trailer accidents, motorcycle collisions, and then we're going to discuss a little bit about the legal rights of injury victims and what steps you can take if you are unfortunate enough to be a victim to protect yourself. First of all, let's start off with National Safety Month and why it should matter to you. What is it? It is recognition and led by the National Safety Council, which focuses on all sorts of safety, whether it's in the workplace, on the roadway, or even at home. And so, if you are familiar at all with any kind of personal injury law, you know that these types of claims can arise from anywhere, ranging from workers' compensation for an injury that happens on the job, a slip and fall at a home or a renter's home, anything of that nature, as well as motor vehicle accidents. So, how does National Safety Month tie into the legal side of personal injury? Of course, the role of negligence, right? And being able to prevent some of these injuries. So maybe it was a hazardous condition that occurred at work that caused the injury, as opposed to simply an unfortunate accident that was unavoidable and it wasn't anybody's fault or a safety defect. Same thing for on the road. You or someone you know has probably been involved in a motor vehicle collision. Most of the time, those are going to be avoidable by one driver or another. Not all the time. Sometimes there are just simply accidents that occur due to roadway conditions or something along those lines, and it is just completely unavoidable. However, most of the time, there can be fault or negligence, right, attributed to a driver. And that's where your conversations about a hazardous roadway, distracted driving, and those kind of conversations come up. So, if you ever find yourself in the unfortunate position of being in a motor vehicle collision and it's not your fault, what can you do to protect yourself? The first thing you're going to do is call the local police department. You're going to want to make a police report about what happened. You're going to want to obtain the insurance information of the other driver. And this will be a tip for that we will go into later is, of course, always make sure that you yourself have insurance and that your premiums are paid so your insurance doesn't lapse. You don't want to be on the receiving end of getting into a collision with someone else who doesn't have insurance. And likewise, it's also a state law that you carry minimum insurance. And so you want to make sure that you're always maintaining that coverage as well in the event something like this should occur. So, in addition to calling the police to get a report made and obtaining the insurance information of the at fault driver, but you will want to make sure that you are preserving evidence of what occurred. So, whether it's photographs that come from the tow yard or photographs from your vehicle after it's driven home by a friend or a family member, or if you are not seriously injured and you're able to get those photographs yourself. This week is Trailer Safety Week, and that's from June 1 through June 7. And this is just some awareness about roadway hazards and legal liability that comes from those. And so the purpose of Trailer Safety Week, it is hosted by the National Association of Trailer Manufacturers and of course focuses on safe towing practices, proper hitching, weight limits and maintenance. So I don't know if you have ever towed a trailer before. I have very limited experience doing so, and I wasn't fantastic at it. I'm going to need a lot more practice before I go anywhere outside of like my residential neighborhood trying to do that. But it's just very different. Of course, anytime you're backing up and you've got to turn the steering wheel the opposite direction, and my trailer that I was pulling was small. It was just for you could fit a four-wheeler on there or something of that nature. And you've always got to be sure that you're braking in further notice than you would in just your regular car. And so braking, backing up, making sure that you can't stop as quickly when you're carrying weight on your vehicle than you can without it. And so just being aware of these things. So if you haven't ever towed a trailer, I would highly recommend doing it in a safe, controlled environment just to see what it's like. And you can very quickly extrapolate that and imagine what it's like to be pulling a tractor trailer with thousands of pounds worth of whatever it is they may be hauling, whether it's products, whether it's livestock. And then you can very quickly understand how something like that could potentially be so dangerous on the roadway. So, this is why it's so important to make sure that those driving in and around also the tractor trailers are really paying attention to these sorts of situations. Don't cut off tractor trailers. They can't stop as quickly as you can. Don't follow them as closely as you are able to follow other regular non tractor trailer vehicles because maybe they can't see you at all. It depends. Can you see their mirrors? Can they see you? Sometimes, if you're too close to them, then that causes other problems and they don't even know that somebody's directly behind them. So, part of the trailer safety week is also doing some awareness for for truck drivers, those who pull the tractor trailers about weight limits and load bearing, making sure everything is on balance and just normal routine maintenance of your tractor trailer because that's going to be very important because when you're carrying loads that heavy, your brakes are going to wear out more quickly and things of that nature. So, there are checklists that the National Association of Trailer Manufacturers put out and highlights during Trailer Safety Week. And some of those things just involve, like I said, making sure your brakes are working, making sure your electricals are working, making sure your chains, your loads are safely secured, and just things of that nature. So, what happens if you are in a motor vehicle accident with a tractor trailer? Who's responsible for it? Well, of course, with all things legal related, the answer is always it depends. So, sometimes it could be the driver, him or herself. Sometimes it could be the company. And then sometimes it could even be the manufacturer. Was it a defect in the tractor trailer as opposed to something that the driver did that was wrong? So some of these like real life examples of some cases that we have handled here at Northland Injury Law are when a load was not safely or properly secured to the back of a tractor trailer and the load fell off in front of the driver and the driver was unable to stop in time to avoid the collision. So that's another practical tip about following too closely to tractor trailers. They, of course, have a duty to secure safely their loads so that these things don't happen. And that driver was found to be at fault for causing this collision. But also, you, as just a driver every day down the roadway, want to make sure that you are giving tractor trailers plenty of room to try as much as possible if something like that does happen to be able to swerve out of the way, hopefully, and avoid that collision from occurring. Other things to keep in mind is these tractor trailers are huge, right? They can't see everywhere around them and everything that's happening around them. And another case that we handled here at Northland Injury Law was when a tractor trailer was on the shoulder and merging back onto the highway and did not see our client who was driving a motorcycle going up the entrance ramp. And so the collision occurred just because the driver simply couldn't see him. And so that would be another example of a driver being liable for causing a collision like that. And just some other things to keep in mind. I'm sure we've all driven by tractor trailers when it's windy outside and how that wind can get up underneath the tractor trailer and blow it around pretty easily. Of course, empty trailers are real easy to blow around, but even full loaded trailers. And so always be cognizant of the weather that you're traveling in as well. because that wind can push them over into the other lane, regardless of how well the driver is driving and maintaining to the best of their ability their own lane. So always just be cautious of where the tractor trailer is and the conditions in which you're driving in. A couple of other real life tractor trailer cases that have been handled by personal injury law firms, some of them, many of them, turn into fatalities, unfortunately, just because of the weight of the semis. So in May of just this year, 2025, there were two teenagers who lost their lives when their SUV collided with a semi truck on Highway 60 near Rogersville, Arkansas. And their vehicle overturned after the impact with the semi truck. And the semi truck did survive, and he sustained moderate injuries. But the two passengers, who were only 15 and 16, were pronounced dead at the scene. There was no alcohol, there were no substances involved. This was just a horrible accident. And another one in February of this year, 2025, was a rear end collision on Route 67. A Chevy pickup truck rear-ended a semi-truck who was hauling heavy equipment, and this was over in West Alton, Illinois, and this also resulted in the pickup driver's fatality. So the semi-truck in that particular accident was completely uninjured, and I'm sure we have all had experiences with fatalities shutting down interstates. And so, of course, this particular wreck also shut down the interstate and caused traffic delays for quite some time while the police were investigating. So, an accident on I-70 of last year, this one happened in July. A passenger vehicle collided with the rear end of a stopped trailer on I-70 near mile marker 117. And this also resulted in a fatality. And so this one was what we refer to as an underride, where the vehicle that impacts with the tractor trailer slides underneath the tractor trailer. And so this just underscores this particular case. If you were to look it up, it really underscores the dangers of these underride collisions involving trailers. Another case I want to briefly highlight was back in July of 2023, and this was on Interstate 44. A tire came loose from a towed vehicle and fell off the tractor trailer, struck another vehicle, and again resulted in a fatal accident. And so this particular case was litigated on concerns regarding the vehicle maintenance and the risks that are posed by unsecured trailer components. So again, like I said, those drivers and the companies of these semi tractor trailers, they do have an obligation to safety secure those loads. And when they don't, the effects of that are incredibly devastating and most of the time completely preventable. So just some statistics on Missouri trailer accidents is, according to MoDOT, in 2021, tractor trailer collisions caused 157 fatalities in Missouri. And in 2022, crashes with commercial motor vehicles caused 162 fatalities in Missouri. And in 2023, collisions with commercial motor vehicles caused 136 fatalities in Missouri. So this is something that's very significant and has impacted very negatively hundreds of lives and hundreds of families. That's why safety surrounding tractor trailers is so important and why we want to highlight National Safety Month and Trailer Safety Week. One important thing to keep in mind with these fatality statistics from 2021 to 2023 is that a majority of the drivers who were killed in these collisions were not wearing seat belts. In 2023, 56% of the drivers who were killed did not have their seat belts on. So make sure that you're always buckling up every time you get in your car, regardless of how far you're going, even if you're just going one exit down. So earlier I had mentioned an underride collision. These are particularly dangerous collisions. And again, what this is when a vehicle rear ends the back of a tractor trailer and goes underneath the trailer. And so there are specific safety devices that tractor trailers have to protect drivers in this situation when they rear end the tractor trailer. They're called rear impact guards. There was a $462 million verdict against a trailer manufacturer over on the St. Louis side of the state back in September 2024 because they found that the manufacturer had not updated their rear impact guard since the mid 80s. And they found that had they simply taken the advice of updated safety regulations, that it would have possibly prevented this particular crash from going underneath the trailer. And so the reason why this was so large is because there was all of the evidence that had they just updated this one thing, this one guard that's specifically there to protect drivers who rear end tractor trailers, that there's a very good chance that the driver of the vehicle who rear ended would not have died. And so that resulted again in a $462 million verdict. So that is an example of a manufacturer defect that the jury found. So, if you're a driver of a tractor trailer, what can you do to help? There's always trailer safety checklists, right? And so, it's always going to be your pre trip inspection before you leave, like checking things such as safety chains, your breakaway system, make sure your tires are good to go, make sure your lug nuts are tight. And so, checking out those external factors and then also the inside. How is everything working? Your lights, your electrical, are your brake lights working? Are your blinkers working appropriately? And then, of course, if you're pulling a loaded trailer, you're going to want to know what the weight limit is, of course, and you're not going to want to exceed that. And you want to balance the load, make sure you're not off kilter, and of course, properly securing your load every time. And so always just checking your brakes and your suspension also. And then, of course, making sure you have your appropriate paperwork, such as registration and your insurance up to date. A lot of the drivers on the road, they're going to be working for a company, and the company is going to be taking care of any kind of documents. But of course, it's always very important to ensure that the insurance is up to date and not lapsed. Another thing to keep in mind to help ensure safe travels on Missouri roadways are reviewing state and federal towing laws. Laws always update frequently, and so this is important to ensure that you're maintaining legal requirements for towing. If you've never towed before, you're going to want to watch some educational videos before you embark on that new venture because it is very different than just driving a vehicle down the road. You're going to want to make sure that your vehicle is inspected every year and in proper working condition. And you're also going to want to, if you're just in a vehicle towing your own personal trailer, I'm not talking about tractor trailers, of course, because they all already have this, but put on a towing mirror. Make sure that you can see the entirety of what you're towing, including back behind it. So, Northland Injury Law, we have box trucks that we advertise on. And of course, we ensure that those trucks are always safe and secure and they are in good working condition and they always have their insurance up to date and being driven safely. June also highlights National Ride to Work Day, specifically on June 10th. So if you don't have anything going on in a couple of days, get your motorcycle or your bicycle and ride to work. And what is it? And what is it for? So, National Ride to Work Day is backed by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and it is, of course, to promote safe and environmentally friendly commuting. The NHTSA strategically placed National Ride to Work Day in June because May was Bike and Motorcycle Safety Month. And so it just really continues on with the things that were discussed in May, and then also talks about a safe way to ride or bike to work. And if you want to learn more about that, you can just click on our episode right here because Eric did a podcast on that last month. Why motorcycle and bicycle safety is so important. So that's because there's no protection around you if you are biking or driving a motorcycle, right? Like when you're in a car, a truck, at least you have some metal surrounding you. So if you get hit, there is a barrier. Obviously, no such thing exists if you're on a bicycle or a motorcycle. And so serious injuries occur if you get hit or are involved in an accident if you are biking or motorcycling. So, to help limit these severe injuries, you're always going to want to wear your protective gear, right? You always want to have a helmet on anytime you get on a bicycle. Missouri now for a few years no longer requires helmets if you are a motorcycle driver. Kansas has had a no helmet law for quite some time, but it's a little bit newer on the Missouri side. So just because it's not a law doesn't mean you have to go helmetless. We, of course, always recommend wearing a helmet if you are on a bicycle or a motorcycle to help prevent usually life threatening or ending head injuries if you were to be involved in a motor vehicle accident. And if you are on a motorcycle, you're going to want to wear your other protective gear. So if you are thrown off your motorcycle, you're trying to prevent road rash as much as possible. You're going to want to wear your riding boots for that same reason. So just always gearing up with protective layers. And of course, when you are on a bicycle or a motorcycle, visibility is less, right? So wear some bright clothing. Wear that construction orange or that construction yellow so you're slightly more visible. Since you're taking up so much less space when you're on a motorcycle or a bicycle, the distracted driving that is all over our roadways because of cell phones now really contributes to vehicle accidents when you're on a motorcycle or on a bicycle. Other things you have to watch out for more so when you're on a motorcycle or a bicycle is poor road conditions. We have all seen the 4-bedroom, 3-bath potholes that exist all over Kansas City. And whereas you might just get a big giant thump in your car if you hit one, if you're hitting one on a bicycle or a motorcycle, the chances of you flying off of your vehicle when that happens is much higher. So you always have to have a heightened level of awareness for road conditions. And you're going to want to look out for other drivers who fail to yield, who fail to yield simply because they can't see you. So anytime you're going out on your motorcycle or your bicycle, just make sure you're wearing that protective gear, you're being super vigilant, and make sure that you're aware of how what you're doing or what you're not doing might impact any kind of claim you might have if you were to get into an accident. And we call that in the legal world comparative fault. What did the person on the motorcycle or the bicycle do that they were not supposed to be doing that contributed to the accident occurring? Could you have done anything to avoid the collision yourself? Were you not paying attention? Could you have stopped in time to avoid it and didn't? So, other than just contacting a personal injury attorney if you are hurt because of somebody else's negligence, how does the law support public safety? The $400 million jury verdict case that I discussed before, that resulted in updated safety measures by that manufacturer for that rear impact guard. So what we can do by filing these lawsuits and holding drivers or manufacturers or companies accountable for their negligence, we can get roadways completely changed. We can get signs posted on dangerous roadways. We can get stop signs or traffic lights installed in dangerous intersections. So there is a lot of contribution from the personal injury litigation side of things to actually improve the roadways that you're driving on. So, what can you do to help promote National Safety Month for June 2025? You can encourage businesses, friends, families to participate in safety events, and you participate in safety events as well. Like I stated, if you've never pulled a trailer before, listen to some videos, watch some videos, go to a driver safety course, things of that nature, just to bring a little bit of awareness to the situation that you're about to put yourself in. You can also a good way of getting some safety knowledge out into the world is by sharing resources on social media. And whenever you yourself get behind the wheel, of course, make sure you're wearing your seatbelt, make sure you've got your helmet on your motorcycle or your bicycle, and of course, making sure that your insurance is up to date and not lapsed. So, this is the Injury Law Pod. Thanks for listening. My name is Ashley Irwin, filling in for Eric Bartlett. And until the next episode, be safe and be well. And if you are involved in any type of accident, feel free to give our office a call for some free legal advice.